Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish Podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I, of course, am Sarah Alapin, your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish Podcast, and I am the CEO of Photos from the Hardy and District Bliss. We do have our little French bulldog Bud over here snoring in his podcasting chair, so you may get some. I suspect he might bark today too. He's a little feisty, so you might get some Frenchy noises around.
Look forward to it.
Yes, it's the best. Let's dish. Today, we are talking with the founder of a law practice focused on the events industry. She works with wedding planners and other event professionals on planner agreements, venue and vendor contract reviews, and contract guidance that arises throughout the wedding planning process. The human behind Foundwell Legal, Casey Glasser, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm really excited about this conversation. I told you this before we started recording, but we have never had a conversation about contracts on the Wedding Dish, and it is so important. And it's such a vital conversation so that your wedding planning process is smooth, everyone is protected, you know exactly what to expect and what you're getting into, all the good stuff. So thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us today.
Absolutely happy to.
All right, well, let's get into it. Most couples view contracts as something they have to sign after they've already chosen a vendor and agreed to work with them. Why do you recommend flipping this approach on its head?
Well, for me, I see the contract as a tool to get to know your venue or your vendor. And also, I think about it sort of like a crystal ball where you can look into it and predict how things are going to go. So you'll see, hopefully, if it's well written, some worst case scenarios mentioned in there, and it should clue you into what's going to happen. And yeah, I think it's a really important tool to get to know who you're going to be working with before you really make that decision.
Yeah, I could not agree more because especially yeah, I mean, it really is a temperature check on how that person works ethically, um, you know, and otherwise. It really tells you a lot about them and their professionalism, right? If it's written by like Chat GPT, there's a different level of professionalism than if I come to Foundwell Legal and I'm like, hey, I need help with my contract.
Yes, definitely. And I think that you can see sort of right away, or at least I can tell now, when something's been DIY'd, and when there's been a professional that's actually worked on it. It signals so much to your clients, like you said, right from the beginning. And this is an industry where details are everything. So vendors and venues really want to make sure that they've got some very clean, detail-oriented agreements.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Speaking of, a venue or vendor's contract really tell you about their business?
The venue or vendor's contract can tell you a lot about their business, like we said. So, firstly, how organized they are. If you're working with a wedding planner and they have information there, say about communication expectations, the hours that they typically operate, that will demonstrate that they have established systems in place and that they're experienced and organized. Those are all things that we like to and need to see. Another thing you can learn is what problems they've encountered in the past and how they handle problems when they arise. So let's say it's a venue in this situation and they have something in there about rain or wind or severe weather. You want to see that there's a backup plan for what happens in these sort of situations. And again, having these systems in place tells you a lot about how experienced they are and how they problem solved. And then lastly, I think personality is a really big one, especially when we're going to these like the DIY sort of agreements, like we spoke about a minute ago. Sometimes personality and tone can shine through in a way that's less than ideal. You want to see something that looks protective of their business, of course, that signals professionalism. But if there is a tone of intensity or defensiveness, that can signal that someone's difficult to work with, or that they're expecting that your relationship's going to go badly before you even start working with them. So that's another thing that I think you can learn.
Those are all such good points because yes, once it happens, it goes in the contract. Because, like I actually had this in my contract from the start, but I had to use it once, which really stinks. I have a if I get injured or something happens to me and I
Mm-hmm.
cannot physically be at your event, that I will replace myself with someone that's either an associate on my team or has a similar vibe, style, etc. And still like run everything through me, but I will send someone who is equivalent in case of an emergency. And that is something that I rarely get asked. But I broke my ankle one year and I still attended the wedding and photographed up through the ceremony, but then I had to leave for the reception and cocktail hour. And, it's not ideal, but I replaced myself with an amazing photographer who did a fantastic job and had the same sort of vibe and personality as me. And yeah, knowing that there's just a different level of comfort when someone has gone through it or has it in the contract and you know that they're going to follow through on actually doing the thing that they've agreed to.
Definitely. And first of all, you're such a trooper for doing the first half of the event still. But yes, I think if I were a client looking at that and I saw if I can't attend, I'm going to replace myself with someone of a similar style, like that would bring so much comfort to me and also signal, okay, this is a professional who's done this before, who's preparing for worst case scenarios. And I think that's a green flag.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have said that better. I couldn't agree more. What are, speaking of, some of the red flags in venue or vendor agreements that couples often overlook?
Well, I think when it comes to overlooking red flags, sometimes it's out of excitement. You just want to get through it and sign. And other times it's just not having the legal background, which most people obviously don't, to catch those things. So, a few that I think can help are slowing down when you get to those last chunks of the agreement that you'll typically skim. So, I think most people, once you see price, okay, like description of services looks good, they'll just skip to signing. Slow down when you get to the end of, and you'll see these like more boilerplate looking clauses. One of which is the force majeure clause, and this is the part that talks about unforeseeable events that can cause a party to not be able to perform under the contract. So things like fire, flood, COVID is a big one. You want to make sure that those address a few things. So, one, specificity of the types of events that are covered. You want government orders, extreme weather, all of those things to be in there. Who is protected under that clause is a big one. A lot of the times it might be one sided. So, the venue can cancel if this one of these force majeure events takes place, but it actually doesn't say anything about the couple's rights. So you want to make sure that everybody's mentioned and protected. Specificity. Oh, and then also what happens if one of these events takes place? Not just performance being excused, but maybe you want the ability to reschedule within the next year or something like that. So slow down, look for who's protected, what events are protected, and what happens. Another big one with venues is hidden fees. So you'll have a price that's listed, usually up top, and then you might see throughout the agreement a few other categories of fees mentioned that aren't actually included in that total. And so the reason that I actually started the firm was that I was helping my sister while she was planning her wedding. And she got really excited about her venue and signed the contract. And then I freaked out because her lawyer sister hadn't read it yet. But when I went back and looked, unfortunately, there were a lot of these hidden fees. So they wanted, there was security, toilet rentals, valet, and none. So you had to book those three things through them and their preferred vendors, but there were no prices listed for any of those things. So now she's on the hook for paying sort of whatever their prices are. So for anyone else that's entering into a venue contract, make sure you know what the price of those items actually is. And then service charges come up all the time. A lot of the time it's about 20%. So you want to calculate all of that when you're determining if this place fits into your budget. And don't just assume that it's that amount that's listed up top.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't review venue contracts very often. So the only things I know that are hidden are the things I'm told by couples, which like there's one venue in the area that charges to use their fridge for your cake, which
Mhm.
I thought was an interesting thing. They said it's a liability. And I
Interesting.
was like, is that in the contract? That like, is that listed somewhere? Or is that just something you were told and you're agreeing to it because it's like, I'm learning this in the, 11th hour.
Mhm.
Um, and the other thing we run into a lot in the DC area is we have a lot of historic venues. So you can't drag anything across the floor. So if you're
Right.
bringing in like some sort of large floral or rental installation, your people have to be able to carry it. So then your florist contract might conflict with your vendor contract.
So yeah, you want to make
Um,
sure there's consistency across everything. That comes
yeah.
up also with wedding content creators, where I've seen this come up. They want to make sure that your photographer and videographer are okay with their presence. And yeah, you need to make sure there's consistency across all of your vendors.
Yeah, and that's a new one because we didn't start seeing them until this season, actually, in the DC area.
Oh,
And
wow.
and apparently this has been something that like is has been going on in other places. We just hadn't really bumped into it. And it is there's a lot of tension between vendors and content creators, apparently. I haven't had one on any of my weddings.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I was living in LA up until a few months ago, but definitely a lot of content creators were there before. But yeah, it makes sense given where they are. Yeah, so I think a lot of them are now looking to protect themselves and make sure that everyone's okay with them being there. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the worst thing you can have happen is a conflict at your wedding, however that
Absolutely.
looks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually will always connect with the videographers before, just so they know who I am. They know I'm a team player, and we have like an open line of communication before we even arrive if it's someone I haven't worked with before. Um,
Yeah, I think that's smart.
it, it'll be interesting to see how the content creator thing goes. But anyway. Yeah, I think that's the important part of what you do also, Casey, is because it is so hard to understand. If you don't have a legal background, these contracts are overwhelming. And
Absolutely.
then the idea that you are looking at one contract and understanding how that impacts the other vendors, it makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah, that's why when I work with couples, I prefer that they go with more of a bundle or a package so that I'm looking at everything and making sure that it all fits together well. Of course, I'll just look at, one contract if they have a question about a particular one, but I definitely prefer to see the full scope of what they're working with.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that makes a huge difference. So, um, yeah, I mean, and I even have it in my, I have an allergy, a weird allergy that is to cranberry, which is served all the time at weddings. And I will have to leave your wedding if cranberry touches something I'm eating.
Oh no. Yeah,
So
it's
it
good
has
to
to be
know.
in my contract because I would have to leave. Like, so you have to be aware that it's a possibility. And while I will also tell the planner or the event coordinator or the caterer, whoever is appropriate, it also requires that the couple notify them as well
Yeah, that's really
because
smart.
we need to make sure that it's like for sure not a thing. Because yeah, I mean, and I think that's an important thing to look at too, is there going to be an issue of feeding your vendor team? And it says, if I can't eat anything at the wedding, I will have to be allowed to go get something to eat if I'm there over 4 hours. So um
I've
Yeah.
been seeing this
Another.
debate over the meal clause online happening. A lot of people assuming that they'll be fed or thinking it's rude to ask. I mean, you're at work. It's many, many hours that you're there. I think it's completely reasonable and yes, very smart to protect yourself in writing in that way.
It protects both of us. You don't want me to have to leave for either
Yeah.
either for the rest of it or for just a meal. I'm going to miss something if I have to leave. um, what do you recommend? Because I know this happens for couples if they really love this vendor or this venue, but there are some terms that they are uncomfortable with in the contract.
I think the mistake that couples make all the time is assuming that your only options are either to sign it or to go with another vendor. And that's definitely not the case. I first start by asking questions, have a conversation with them about it. If there's something that's unclear to you or that you're not comfortable with, you can ask why that's there. Maybe it's a matter of like local law that you're not aware of, or you can ask that they change it. And it's interesting because I think that there's a almost a mismatch about who has the power when it comes to contracts, and really it's equal. I've heard vendors say, well, I feel like I have to change something if someone asks me to change it, and then couples will say, well, I don't think they're allowed to change anything. So have the conversation, ask questions. It's definitely better to hash it out ahead of time. And also, I think focus first on the provisions that matter the most to you. So, rank them. What is most important to change versus if there's like a small wording issue that probably won't ever amount to anything, you don't have to waste time on it. Um, and the other thing is that there are attorneys like myself that are willing to review the contract with you and flag if there are any actual issues that you should be cautious of. These are contracts that involve a lot of money, usually. There's a lot of risk involved. You're responsible for often yourselves, but also your guests and your other vendors. So it's something that should be taken seriously, and not just signed because you feel pressured to, or just because you love a specific vendor. Yeah, these are contracts that often involve more money than any other contract you've signed maybe so far in your life. So it's good to take it seriously. If you're uncomfortable with something or it's confusing, I recommend having an attorney review it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a lot of money. There's a lot of risk involved. Um, it's I it's good to know that there are professionals out there like you who are able to review and guide couples because this is in all likelihood, the first time you're reviewing this type of contract. Even if you are an HR person, you're not familiar with this level of contract or whatever. You know what I mean? Like HR
Yeah, it's
probably
a
was
very
the best example.
specific, no, but it's a very specific industry, you're right, and things will be included in a contract because people that have been doing this work for 10, 15, 20 years have seen issues arise in the past. And so often there's a reason that things are in there, but it's important to understand the why and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I another question I have for you. When you said change the contract, would you accept as a couple and or a vendor an addendum as opposed to changing the actual like contract that you have that basically like as a template that you send out?
It depends what it says. If it was anything that conflicted with the terms of the contract, then you can create some uh, confusion around which part of it actually governs. Something I've seen at least planners do is have their main agreement, but then they'll sort of tweak the exhibit, which has like the scope of their services in accordance with what they're actually going to do for this couple, be it full planning, partial planning, day of. So in that way, you definitely can, but yeah, it would just depend what the addendum is for.
Got it. I love the legal world where it's like, it depends.
It always depends. That is day one of law school. That is the first thing you'll learn, and it's so annoying, but it's so true.
I mean, it makes perfect sense because it's the law and it's all of it is case by case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you
I
tell.
love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the wedding dish today, Casey. Where can our listeners find you online?
So you can either go to my website, which is Foundwell, Foundwell -legal.com. I'm also on Instagram, foundwell.legal, and also on TikTok, which I should post more on.
I have not even considered approaching the TikTok world. While I realize I should, it's just another whole thing that
It is. I'm learning to have a little bit more fun with it, but yeah, it is its own kind of beast.
well, we will tag you, of course, on our show notes. So if you're driving right now, walking the dog, taking your mental health walk for the day, whatever you may be doing, it will be super easy to find Casey and Foundwell Legal. And we'll tag you, of course, on Instagram. You can find us on Instagram at the Wedding Dish Podcast. And you can apply to join us as a guest on the show. If you would like to be, part of the show, go to theweddingdishpodcast.com. There's an application there that you can fill out. And don't forget to tune in next week. We have another amazing guest coming to you on The Wedding Dish. And if you like the podcast, give us a follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. Casey, thank you so much for joining me today. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. It was so good talking with you.
Until next time, cheers, everybody.